Hi guys, good morning and welcome to this other video. I hope you guys are doing great. So today in this video we are going to go with the next video or the last video of this series of video that we have been doing on FortiGate vDOMs. So today we'll be jumping on lab 3, which is multi-client vDOM, and also complete with lab 4, which is segmentation of 3 departments, right? So in the previous videos, we did lab 1 and 2, where we did initial vDOM setup, where we created 2 vDOMs, then do IP addressing, and also created separated administrators account. So we did that lab and we could see what are the differences or the different level of permission that each administrator could have, either it being an administrator of vDOM or an administrator of the global FortiGate. So we saw that in lab 1. So after that lab 1, we went on lab 2, where we did inter-vDOM communication. So like 2 vDOMs, then we'll do inter-vDOM communication, because by default, even though you are creating the vDOMs on the same physical FortiGate device, there is no communication between the vDOMs. So you need to implement the inter-vDOM communication. And also we also saw how to do enable internet access to those vDOMs, right? So we discuss about the two options that are available. So either you are doing you are configuring you are giving access based on the internet access that you have on your physical device, or you are providing each vDOM access depending if they decide to acquire their own ISP. So if they have like two interfaces, they can decide to connect their own ISP on one of their network interfaces from the physical FortiGate device. Then from there, they can configure their access to their internet. So today in this video, what we are going to do is we are going to consider that we are a vendor, or we are like an MSP. So we have like multiple clients that we manage from our FortiGate device. Let's say we have like 2 or 3 companies. So we'll see how to create vDOMs for each of those companies, right? So we'll see how to create each vDOM for each of those companies. We'll do addressing. We'll mainly talk here about limitations, so how to limit resources to provide to grant limited resources to each vDOM. That will be like limitation will be regarding maybe like internet access, or maybe say bandwidth to access internet, or some settings related to number of user accounts that you can create, number of VPN session that can be on a specific can run on a specific vDOM. So we'll see all of that in lab 3. Then in lab 4, we'll see how to do segmentation of department segmentation. So in this lab, we'll see how to create VLANs in vDOMs. So here in this lab, instead of creating vDOMs, we are instead going to see how to create VLANs in vDOMs, right? So that's how we're going to do. So without wasting time, let's jump directly on our FortiGate device to proceed. So here on my FortiGate device, as you can see, this is the same FortiGate device and the same settings that we have been using since the previous videos, right? So in that video where I said we assign interfaces, as you can see, these are the different interfaces that I have on my FortiGate physical device, and you can see here what are the interfaces that are assigned to each vDOM, right? So we did this, and we do intercommunication vDOM. So all of those settings are in the videos, in the previous videos. You can see them. You can see those videos on the description of this one, or you can go directly on the channel and you will go through the list of videos. Then you will see the previous videos. So those are the recent videos that we did a week ago. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under system from here. So system under here, I'll go under vDOM. As I said, we are going to create like two companies, right? What I think of is, instead of creating 2 companies, right? What I'm thinking of doing here is instead renaming these 2 vDOMs. So we are going to call vDOM A Contoso, then call vDOM B Fabricam, right? So we are going to call these two vDOMs Contoso and Fabricam. So here you will notice that from here there is no way you can rename a VDOM. So this is also good to know. So let's say if I go, for example, in the edition mode, if I go like edit here, you see I have no option here where I can edit or rename this VDOM, right? I cannot rename this VDOM from here. So another option that we usually use if when you want to rename a VDOM here is you go here under admin. So you go here and you do a backup, right? So you perform a backup of the global settings of your FortiGate, right? So let's perform a backup. So from here, what we are going to do is after performing the backup, you simply open the backup. We'll say edit, right? Let's say edit the backup from here. So I'll say edit the backup. So the idea here is to search each information related to vDOM. Let's say let's just hit Control F. So from here, what we are going to do is simply to say, okay, let me go from here. Let's go under edit. Then I'll hit replace, right? So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to search any occurrence or any instance of vDOM B. I will rename it to Fabricam, right? Any instance where any place where vDOM B is written in the configuration file, because the backup file that we have is the file that contains all the configurations or all the settings that are actually configured on the physical FortiGate device, right? Okay. So what I need to do from here, I'm simply going to edit or replace each instance of vDOM B with Fabricam. So I'll just hit here replace all. Okay. So you can see now directly from here that we have now Fabricam that has been applied here. Then also from here, we are going to rename vDOM A. We are going to call vDOM A Contoso, right? We are also going to call vDOM A Contoso. They are also here replace all, right? As you can see, you have Contoso here now. So every instance or any place where Contoso was vDOM A was written is now renamed as Contoso. So all I need to do now is simply to save this file. Okay. So I'm simply going to save this file. Then I'll come back here on my FortiGate device this time. As you can see from here, when you go under vDOM here, you still see vDOM A, vDOM B. So what I'm going to do is to go here. Then I'll go back here under config. Then I'll go back on restore. This time I'm going to fetch for the file that I recently modified. So I'm selecting the modified file. So the file that I renamed or I did setting, I did changes on them. So from here, what I need to do, I'll simply bring back the file that I modified. So the backup that was modified. So I'll simply restore it here at the global level, right? So hit OK. Then I'll just hit OK from here. This will apply the changes on my FortiGate. So now the firewall has rebooted. So from now we can connect again. So okay, so from now we are connected again. We are connected back on our FortiGate device. So from here, you will see now that under vDOM selection, now you have Contoso and Fabricam, right? So if I also go here under system vDOMs, then now from here you see vDOM A has become Contoso and vDOM B has become Fabricam. So this is what I wanted to implement. So all looks good. So what we need to do from here is okay, assign interfaces. Those vDOMs already had interfaces from the previous videos. NAT and access to internet. We already have NAT and access to internet. So from here, I can also check directly from this workstation. So this is one of the workstation that was connected to vDOM A. So if I do if config from here, so I can see this is the IP address 172.1600. So if I double check again from here, if I go under Contoso. From here, if I double check under under Contoso, if I go under network then interfaces, so you will see from here, okay, under internal one, I have this IP address. I have this one client that is actually connected. So this is the subnet 172.1600.1. So that's the same subnet that I have here. As you also know, we did configure access to internet, right? So normally this part is already working properly. So now we need to do with limit resources for each vDOM, right? We are going to see how to limit resources for each vDOM or for each client. So the vDOM also, in our case now, is the client. So directly from here, the first resource that we can limit from here is, for example, access to internet. So I explained the last time that for a specific user or for a specific client, or let's say for a specific vDOM, we can decide whether we are going to the internet either through, as you can see from this image here, as for now we have Contoso here and Fabricam. So actually, from the previous video, what we did was we granted access to this vDOM through the root vDOM going to the one interface, because the one interface is actually uh, connected, or the one interface actually belongs to the root vDOM. So for each vDOM to go to internet, they need to go through this one interface that belongs to the root vDOM. So this is because actually I have only one ISP that is actually connected on my physical FortiGate device. So for a particular client, or let's say for this vDOM, if this client, for example, if Contoso, because actually we are connected like administrator of Contoso, if Contoso decide, for example, that they want to manage their own internet access by themselves, so they will need, for example, to subscribe to an ISP internet subscription. Then that box or that internet or that ISP needs to provide a box that will be connected on this other interface, right? We'll connect that interface, that box directly to this interface. Then from the firewall policies here, under firewall policy here, so this access to internet will redirect the outgoing interface. Will not The outgoing interface now is not going to be the link between the vDOM, the Contoso vDOM, and the root vDOM, but it will instead be the link, or the outgoing interface is instead going to be this internal tree where the ISP box, internet access box, is going to be connected, right? So either that is the second way, but for this case, for example, here where we are granting access through our root vDOM, so we have only this one interface. Let's say, for example, let me double check here on my bandwidth. So let me check fast.com. So normally on this on my FortiGate, I have like 1 gig. I have a bandwidth of 1000 megabyte per second, right? I have a bandwidth of 1000 megabyte per second on my one interface. So normally on this FortiGate device, my one interface. So if I go here under global config and also here under interfaces, so normally from here, this one interface on my physical FortiGate device has a bandwidth of 1000 megabyte per second. So let's say, for example, I want to limit, for example, 300 megabyte per second to Contoso, right? Let's say I want to give 300 megabyte per second to Contoso. So how am I going to do that? So for people who saw the previous video where we talk about these were videos on VLANs, where we talk about VLANs priority and how to do quality of service and also bandwidth sharing. So in that video, we'll talk about how to allocate bandwidth to each VLAN, right? So if you have if you remember about that previous video talking about VLAN, so you have an idea of what we are going to implement here if you want to limit bandwidth resources for each vDOM, right? So we are going to do the same. We are going to apply the same settings in this case. So from here, what we are going to do, we are going to go here under the root vDOM, because remember the one interface belongs to the root vDOM so far for our case from here. So I'll go under policy and policy on object. So from here, you see under firewall policies. Under firewall policies here, you have this policy that led traffic that led VDA. So the VDA was the previous vDOM A, which is now Contoso. So the VDA to internet. Okay, VDA to internet. So also talking about VDA, VDB here, these are also information that we could rename. We could also rename here when we exported this. We did this backup, and where we are renaming vDOM A to Contoso and vDOM B to Fabricam. We could also decide to rename everything that is VDA as like contoso, or to rename it as we wanted, right? I'm just mentioning it here. So as you can see from here, we have our firewall policy that let this contoso vDOM to go to internet. As you can see, we already have traffic that is actually ongoing. So from here, what we need to do is to go here under traffic and shaping. So here under traffic and shaping is where we need to configure quality of service, or let's say bandwidth limitation. So this is where we need to configure bandwidth limitation. So from here, what we need to do, for example, is to create a traffic shaper. So people who saw the previous video, as I mentioned earlier, they have a better understanding. For those who have not yet watched the previous video, you can just simply go on the channel, then we'll see the video related to traffic shaping on VLANs, right? So here I'm going to create a new traffic shaper from here. I'm going to call this traffic for contoso. Let's just say it simple like this. Traffic for contoso, priority high. Okay. Bandwidth. So let's say, for example, I'm giving 300 megabytes, right? So I'm giving here 300,000 kilobyte per second. So same thing here. Okay. So maximum bandwidth and guaranteed bandwidth. So I'm actually guaranteeing them 300 megabyte per second of bandwidth, right? Okay, so from here I'll hit okay. This is traffic shaper. Okay, so now I need to create a traffic shaping policy, right? Traffic shaping policy, because pay attention that actually this is the firewall policy that is being applied to the workstation. So to this contoso vDOM. So from now, if I check, for example, here on this workstation, let's go on the web browser from this vDOM and try to access so actually you have access to internet. Okay, so let's try, for example, fast.com to see how much bandwidth we are actually receiving on this workstation from. Oh, okay. Oh, oh, so you see, actually from this vDOM we are getting like 830 megabyte per second. So this vDOM has actually no limitation. So on my physical device, you can see that on my physical device I'm having 940. Why for each vDOM we are actually able to go up to 830 megabyte per second. So there is actually no limitation on the vDOMs, right? So what we are going to do so far is we are going now under traffic shaping from here. So we have created this traffic shaper. We need to apply it now on the traffic shaping policies, right? So from here, I'm going to create a traffic shaping policy. So I'm going to call this contoso to internet, right? So from here, if traffic matches source interface, so the source interface here is going to be the interface that comes from our contoso VLAN, contoso vDOM, sorry. So this is the link. So for people who saw previous video, they have the better understanding. So I'll just selecting here link to VDA. Okay, so the outgoing interface here is going to be the one link. Okay, so source I'm going with all, destination here also I'm going with all, services also here I'm going with all. Then so after you say if traffic matches these settings here, then apply this here. So what is going to be applied is the traffic shaper. So the traffic shaper that I'm going to select here is going to be the recent one that I created. So this is going to be the traffic shaper that I want to apply for traffic for internet that goes from the contoso, for traffic that goes from the contoso vDOM to the internet. So I'm going to apply this shaper. So this is it. I'm going to apply now. Okay, so this is actually being applied. So if I go back here under traffic, okay, I can see, for example, what is the bandwidth that is actually being used. Okay, so let's jump directly again on the workstation from here. Then we'll refresh this to see if we still have access to this much bandwidth. So I'll just refresh from here. Okay, 400, 350. Okay. Okay, so far we are actually on 320. Oh, okay, so we're actually on 320. So let me refresh again. Refresh. Okay, so now As you can see, we are actually on 290, right? So you can see now that actually our traffic shaper is being applied, right? So we have a bandwidth limitation for this workstation is actually like 300 megabytes. So if I can refresh again, you will see we will not go more than 300 as from now. So you see, we still turning around 280, 290. So we don't go more than 300 because that is what is actually configured here. We actually applied at 300 megabyte per second, right? So that's how you do traffic limitation or bandwidth limitation for each of your vDOMs. So you can create multiple vDOMs. Then for each of them, you can assign a bandwidth, right? So let's say, for example, this user has been using this 300 megabyte for a while. Then suddenly they realize that they don't need this amount of bandwidth. Let's say, for example, they want to reduce their consumption and they want to go down to 100 megabyte per second. So they want to go to 100 megabyte per second. So what we need to do from here, we can reduce this bandwidth again. So we'll just go here under the traffic shaper. So from here, let's say the user wants now to use only 100 megabyte per second, right? So we'll go down with 100 megabyte per second here. I'll hit OK. So this is going to be the new bandwidth limitation that this vDOM is going to receive, right? So if I go and check again on the client workstation here on this vDOM, so I'll refresh again from here. Okay. Oh, as you can see now, the bandwidth is going down because it's actually detecting that we have less than 100 megabyte. As you can see, I'm having now actually 100 megabyte on this workstation. So this 100 megabyte here because I'm actually this is the only workstation that we have on that vDOM so far. So that's why we can see like exactly like the we are having like the exact amount of bandwidth that was set as the maximum, right? So you see, this is what the user is going to have. So the user is not going to have more than the 100 megabyte that was defined. So that is it for bandwidth limitation. So talking about limitations also, or how to limit some resources. So if I go back here under global config, then I go here under settings, systems, and vDOM. As you can see, so other limitation that I have, if I go here under vDOM and hit edit, you will see that here below we have resource usage. So here under resource usage, this is where you have some of the resources that you can apply some limitations. You as the global administrator, right? You as the global administrator, because if you go here under the client workstation, or let's say under the vDOM. Let me connect here as the vDOM administrator because yeah, let me connect as a vDOM administrator. I remember that we created an administrator for each vDOM. So I think the vDOM administrator for this vDOM was admin A. So let me provide the password here. Okay, so here as you can see, I'm actually connected as the vDOM administrator. So this is the account for this vDOM administration. So this, and you can see from here, this user don't have access to any they don't have access to any to the vDOMs, like to change the information regarding the resources for which they can have access, right? So from here, so just to mention that resource limitation is something that is applied only at the global level. So at the global level, so the global administrator is the one that can perform this resource limitation. So among the resource limitation object that you have here, you have object under active sessions. So you have the current usage, you have the global maximum, you have the override maximum, and you have the guaranteed information here. So you have those information you can have them under policy and object. So you can have a limited set of firewall policy that you can create. Same with firewall addresses group. Also here under user and devices. So you can define a limited number of users and users group that you can create. Same here under VPN. So VPN session, IPsec tunnels, phase 1 and phase 2. So you also have here information about log disk quota, right? So you have, these are some resources for which you can provide some limitations, right? Okay, so what we are going to do so far is we are going to apply, for example, let's say we are applying a user limitation, right? The number of user accounts that can be created on the Contoso vDOM, right? So let's say, for example, we are limiting, maybe let's just go, for example, with two. Let's say we are limiting for maximum two user accounts. So I'll hit OK from here. Okay, this was applied to Contoso. Let me double check. Okay, here under user, okay, we have a limit of 2 users that we can create. So for now, we have no user account under current usage. We have 0%, so 0 user account actually being used. So let me connect here on the vDOM administration portal. So I'm connected here as a vDOM administrator for this vDOM. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create user account. So I'll go here under user definition. Then from here, I'm just going to create a first user account. So next, so I'm just going to do test one with the password. Next. So this for testing purposes. So this one. Okay. So if I go back, for example, here under global admin, I will do a refresh from here. Then just to double check, you see now that under user, you have current usage 50%. Okay, so one is already used out of two. Okay, so if I go here again and create a second user, just calling this one test2. Okay, next, submit. Second user created so far. So also from here, refresh, then go again here. Okay, you see actually now 100%. So you have already reached the limit, right? So let's go again. Let's say we are trying to create another user, right? So from here, as you can also see, when defining the number of users that can be allowed, you did not mention what type of user it can be. So it can be either a local user, a remote user, or any type of user here. You will go under the same limitation. So from here, I'll just go with test3 password. Next, submit. Oh, you see now when I try to create a third user, they will mention that okay, the vDOM property limit has been reached. Okay, vDOM property limit has been reached. So now you cannot create more than 3 users. So this is just to mention that this is one of the resource limitation that you can apply here. So you can apply it maybe for firewall policies. You know, for example, by default, when you subscribe to a trial license for FortiGate, you have a limitation, for example, for three FortiGate firewalls that you can create, 3 interfaces. So here you don't have much of those information here, but as you can see, this is the default information that you have here. You can perform some limitation you can perform some limits on each vDOM depending on the settings. So let's say, for example, if you are selling a vDOM service to a client, right? In the contract that you will be signing with the client, you will mention, for example, okay, I'll be providing you a vDOM where you are going to have like 2 physical interfaces. You are going to have a bandwidth of 300 megabytes per second. You are going to have a limitation of maybe 10 user account. You are going to have a limitation of maybe 200 SSL VPN session. You are going to have a limitation, for example, of maybe 20 firewall policies. So these are these are going to be like the criteria or the different elements that you are going to mention in the contract that you are going to provide to the person to whom you are creating the vDOM, right? So this is just an idea. I'm just suggesting like this. I'm just saying like this. So this is one of many other limitations that you can apply, right? So we go with this limitation so far. Then from here also, what we needed to do also after limitation. So you have seen there are multiple limitations that you can resource limitation that you can configure on the vDOMs, right? So now we are going to jump on lab So let's say, for example, you are in a company where you have like multiple departments. Let's say human resources, accounting, IT department, administration, management, and so on. So let's say, for example, you want to isolate traffic for each of those departments, right? So I think we already explained that previously on the labs that we did for VLAN. So we saw how to implement that traffic for VLAN. So we create different VLANs, we created inter VLAN communication and firewall rules and policy to let those VLAN go to internet. And we also see how to block inter VLAN communication. So we did that in this lab related on the labs that we did related to VLANs. So we did that based on this image, right? So what we are going to do here in this lab 4 is we are going to create these VLANs under vDOMs, right? So we are not going to implement this like a vDOM because as for now, I think we have a better understanding that we can also implement this under vDOMs, right? You can decide that okay, the HR department, the finance department, the management department, you can create separated vDOMs, right? So you can do it. It will be the same like the what we have been doing since this lab 1, lab 2, and lab 3 so far. You can do the same here, then just create each department as being a separated vDOM, right? But as I said in this video, what we are going to do, we are instead going to create this as VLAN under the vDOM, right? So without wasting time, let's say for example here under let's say for example here under this vDOM, which is Contoso. Let's say Contoso Enterprise have like 5 separated departments for which they want to isolate traffic, right? So what we are going to do from here is that we are going to create separated VLANs for those traffic. So here under interfaces, what I will be doing is, for example, from here, I'll just go here under interface, right? So under interface here, I'll just create like HR. Let's say I'm creating a VLAN called HR. So this is of type VLAN. So this will bind to the physical interface internal 2, for example. So I'll be calling this VLAN VLAN 10. Let's call it VLAN 10. Then from here, I can create also a DHCP server for this VLAN, as you all know. So I'll be calling this 172.168.1.1/24, for example. Then administrative access, then also configure DHCP server here, right? So I can also configure DHCP server from here. So this is the HR. I'll hit OK. So I have the HR VLAN here. I can also create another VLAN also from here. I'll call this accounting. Okay. This is accounting VLAN, also bind to the internal. This, for example, is VLAN 20. Then I also create a DHCP server from here. 120.1/24, right? So also enabling administrative access and also DHCP server from here. So actually, as you can see, you have these two VLANs with their IP addresses or their, let's say, their DHCP server enabled under a physical interface that also have his own IP DHCP server, right? You can also create another VLAN for this interface. Let's just create the last VLAN from here. Just call this one the IT department. Okay, so we'll be binding IT department to this other interface, which is, for example, VLAN 30. Let's go with it like this. So 172.16 130.1/24. Okay, so also go from here to, so as you can see, okay, you have the three VLANs that we have configured here, right? We have the 3 VLANs so far. So it means from here, what we can do is the same settings that we did when we were doing the lab on the VLANs here. So let me jump here on this lab. So this was it. So from here, we are like from the FortiGate device, we have an interface on which we have created different VLANs. Then what we need to do from our FortiGate device now is simply to add, let's say for example, if I go here under my FortiGate device here, all we need to do is simply to connect this vDOM. Okay, connect this vDOM. So I'll be connecting, for example, this port is port 2. We'll be connecting this port 2 directly to our switch. Then on the switch now, we are going to configure VLANs again. So we are going to create the VLANs again on. So yeah, it's going to be the same scenario here. So on the VLAN, on the switch, on the switch, we need to assign some port number here to each interface, to each VLAN, right? We'll say, for example, interface Ethernet 2 to Ethernet 10 are going to belong to VLAN 10. Then Ethernet 11 to Ethernet 19, they are going to belong to the other VLAN. Then we'll see how to configure this other interface here like a trunk. So we already did that in this video, in the video where we did this activity, right? So I'm not going to repeat or to do that activity again from here, right? So all you need to understand is that from your vDOM, you can create separated VLANs, and the same way you will do with the VLANs when you are doing it with the physical FortiGate device, you can do the same here when you're on the VLAN, on the vDOM, right? So you will configure inter-VLAN communication, you configure firewall policy to grant. Let's say, for example, if you go here under firewall policy, if I want to grant access to internet to the devices that are actually in the human resource or the HR department or the HR VLAN, you can go here under new. You will say, for example, from here you will say, for example, HR to internet. So from here you go on incoming interface. Here you are going to go with the VLAN, which is HR department. From here, then your outgoing interface here is going to be the link to the VDA, right? Link to the VDA is here. Here is the link from Contoso to the internet, right? That is going to be the link that you are going to use. Then same thing here, the source, the destination, you just need to implement it. As I mentioned, we are going to do it the same way we did this video here on the VLAN, right? The same implementation, but this time around, you will be implementing it on a vDOM, right? You'll be implementing it on a vDOM. So guys, I think this is all what I have to provide here today. So this is going to be the last video of this series. This is going to be the last video of this series of video that we did on FortiGate, VLAN, and vDOM. So the previous videos were on VLANs, and this one are actually on vDOMs. So with this one, we have a better understanding of what are the advantages of vDOMs, what are the limitations of vDOMs, what are the benefits of having vDOMs over VLANs, or what are also the advantages of having VLANs over vDOMs. So you also know from this video what are the use cases where it is better to apply VLAN, and what are the other use cases where it is preferable to apply vDOMs. Okay, so guys, let me know in the comment section if you have any thought, any discussion, any idea. If you want to suggest any use case that we could apply, just let me know in the comment section. Maybe there is a use case that you have on your own company, or any use case that you have in your head that you might think, okay, how can we apply this use case? So just let me know in the comment section, then we'll see how to do a video about it. So guys, let me know in the comment section you have any suggestion. If you need any help, any assistance, where if you are preparing any NSE certification, NSE 3, NSE 4 certification, just let me know. If you need any training material in the any training material for your preparation, just let me know in the comment section. Then we'll see how to implement, or we'll see how to provide you the information. So guys, stay tuned. Let's meet in the next video.